welcome to episode 40 of All About African Violets. All About African Violets is musically sponsored by Ted Yoder. His wonderful music is available on his website at tedyoder.com. It is also available from iTunes. Hi everybody, welcome. Come on into my sunroom, have a seat, and I'm so glad you're here. It's Easter Sunday. Well, it's actually Saturday night, but when you see this, it'll be Easter Sunday, so happy Easter. For those of you who celebrate Easter, happy Easter. And I'm going to be back on Facebook today. I'm all happy about that. I'm very happy about it. This was challenging, a challenging thing to give up for Lent. I know I should be talking about this during the end of the podcast, but I'm just so excited that I'm finally going to be back on Facebook. I feel like I missed a whole lot of stuff. Anyway, it's question day, and I forgot to remind everyone that it's question day. It's the last Sunday of the month, but I did get one. So I've got one for you. Pam says, "Hi Annie, as I looked at African Violets online, I came across one called Cody. I lost a loved one by the name of Cody, and I would like to buy it. I was wondering if you or one of your viewers would know where I could buy one." And I did answer this one, I think it was on the website. It was either on the website or on Facebook. Anyway, if you don't find a vendor who has it, and you don't find anyone, and maybe there is someone, if there is a viewer out there growing this who would, want to help out in that respect with a leaf, you might want to leave a message or leave a comment on the website. So, but normally the best way to find a violet, which I believe Cody is an older variety, maybe what's called a vintage violet, is Barbara Elkin. This used to be published in the magazine. Now it's on the AVSA website. I will link to it in the show notes. But Barbara is the queen of vintage violets, and what she does is people write to her asking for, if she knows of anyone who has an older variety, and oftentimes she does. She has kept a list for many, many years of people who say they're growing a certain variety, or she'll put the call out occasionally in the magazine that these are the most wanted or most requested varieties. So that would be my best guess in terms of finding an older variety that you're not finding on any of the commercials that you're finding online. So good luck. I hope you find it. I know it's kind of cool to have a violet that has a name that has a connection for you. I have I have had some of those myself. And then I did get a question about fertilizer, and this is very interesting because it says, "Hi Annie, I have a few questions," and she says, "Is it okay to use a fish/seaweed fertilizer with a 795 formula for propagating leaves, or should I be using a formula with 20-20-20? Those are the NPK numbers." And so on this is her first question. And so I asked Joyce, because if it's scientific, I always ask Joyce. And I said, "Joyce, I'm thinking that a more balanced fertilizer would be better for leaves, since a higher middle number is usually more of a bloom booster, isn't it? Do you agree?" And Joyce says, no, she doesn't agree. I love this. She says, she doesn't say no, but she says, "I like the fish seaweed formulation better. It's milder and from a natural source that will be easier for leaves to process." So, we learn something new every day. And the second question is, how long does a peat/perlite/vermiculite potting mix last unused? I still have a bag of potting mix I had mail ordered from a commercial African violet grower about 10 years ago. Would it be safe to use it if I sterilized it in an oven, or should I just bin it? Thanks again. And these questions are from Joy. I meant to tell you that. I'm sorry. And so I asked Joyce about this as well. And I said, I'm thinking that the potting mix should be fine even though it's old, unless maybe it had fertilizer added to it. Do you think she needs to bake it in the oven to sterilize it? And Joyce says, if it has been in a closed bag and been dry for the 10 years, it is probably fine to use now. If it had been open and in a wet location, it could have been contaminated, and then I would use it in the garden or compost it. So Joy, I hope that those help you. Those answers help you. And then I had another question from Patricia, and this is the lady who asked the question last week about forbid. She told me she'd had a typo. It's not forbode, it's forbid. And we had great comments from Daniel on the website, and also from Elsie, who both obviously have experience using these types of pesticides. And so there's good information there. But Patricia writes again and says, I really like your hat. That was my hat last week. She said it seems to suit for here, and she lives in Canada. And she said, thank you for the information on pesticides. I try to keep my collection pest free. I hope I'm doing the right things. How do you keep your collection free of pests? Well, that's a really good question. And I think it's one that we all wonder about from time to time. I mean, how do you not get stuff in the house? You know, what happens? Things can happen. Well, things do happen, but you take the best precautions that you can. What I do is I generally try to only bring leaves in to add to my collection, because when I bring a leaf in, I can wash it in soap and water, and that's going to take care of pretty much anything. Then I can, put the leaf down. It takes longer when you use leaves to get a plant and have something to show for your work, but I think it's the safest way to go. I think it's better than bringing a plantlet in. If you need to bring, the chances of bringing a hitchhiker along with a plantlet are exponentially higher than with a leaf. So, but if you do bring a plantlet into your home, there's great info on isolating in Pauline's book, Growing to Show. Well, in every book, there's information about isolating. But if you're going to bring a plant in to your collection, you need to isolate it. And I think the general consensus is you need to isolate it for at least 6 weeks. When I have brought plants into my collection, I isolate for at least 12 weeks. I figure if anything is going to be wonky or look weird or show up strangely, it's going to happen within that 12-week period. And the other thing I do immediately is, if I bring a plant in, is I repot it. I disbud it completely, so no buds come into the house. It gets disbudded usually right away, and then I repot it, and I try to remove as much of the existing soil from the root ball as I can. I'll gently tease a lot of that away with my fingers, and then I will run it under lukewarm water in the sink and get whatever I can get off. And then I will repot it into my own mix, and then it immediately goes into isolation. So I have a separate stand, and usually I try to do it in another room to really isolate for at least 12 weeks. That is the best way that I know of to help avoid bringing anything in. Also, I have other houseplants in my sunroom, but they've all been in here for a very long time, and I don't bring anything new in to the sunroom without, again, watching it in another location, isolating it somewhere else for a period of time. And right now, I don't even have, the only violet that's in the sunroom is the big box violet, because it was so dang cold, for a few weeks that I rolled the stand back into the kitchen. So it's in there, the second stand that I have. But I remember, this is a great memory that I have from when I lived in Southern California. There is a commercial grower there. Her name is Ginny McCann. And hi, Ginny, I don't know if you're watching, but if you are, hi. And every September, I think she used to do this, end of summer, beginning of fall. She used to have a barbecue at her house, and everyone, all the clubs in Southern California were invited. Everybody was invited to come. And it was always great because you could get plants while you were there. Ginny is also a hybridizer. I think her series is called Balboa, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't have any of her plants anymore, but I did have them for years, even after I left Southern California. But you go to her house, and if you wanted to see the plant room, because she had this huge, because she's a commercial grower, huge, gorgeous plant room. Actually, she had plants in every part of her home, and so she had more than one growing area. But if you wanted to visit the growing area and see everything, you had to do that right when you got to the house. You parked your car, you walked up the sidewalk, and you went into her home. And then if you wanted to see the plant room, someone, she or one of her, helpers would take you to the plant room, and you could see everything and, buy anything that you might want to get. And then you could go out through the kitchen and then out into her backyard, which was huge and beautiful. But once you were out in the backyard on the lawn, you could not go back in to the plant room, because the risk of carrying something from the lawn and her garden outside back into the plant room was too great for her to take that chance, particularly as a commercial grower. So, it's really about taking precautions about not bringing things in and putting them right with your collection, and being sure that you isolate. And that's really what I do the most of. So I hope that is helpful for you. I'm grabbing my notes here. I want to make sure I talked about everything, because I made some notes about this, and I did. Yay. Well, so let's move on. Those were the questions I got, and they were great ones. Thanks, you guys. Thank you very much. Let's talk about tips and treasures. Now, I sat down here without a book that came in the mail this week, and I'm going to go get it. So hang on. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. I meant to, I always think I have all my stuff, and then I sit down and I don't. But this is Francine Pillon's book, St. Paulia. And the introduction and stuff on the back is written by Dr. Jeff Smith. And she wrote this book in French, and then she had it translated into English, and it was very expensive. I will be very honest with you guys. It was very spendy, but it's gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous. I should have, because I just ran and got it. I mean, she does show some great photos of plants. She spends a lot of time on the species, discussing them, showing photos of them, describing them, and she has a great fondness for trailers. And so she also has a very good section about trailers. And this is a great, great book, I gotta tell you. If you are, I have books from all over the world and in languages that I cannot read, because I just love to have anything that I can find about these plants that we love so well. But she also has great info on the history. She has maps. She has more info about the species. She talks about everything. Let me just tell you. The history and origins, the chapters, the history and origins of the African violet, the species of the genus St. Paulia, the cultivation of African violets, pests and diseases and their management, hybridization, as you know, she's also a hybridizer. And then chapter 6 is devoted to African violet trailers, and then she talks about shows, and then a glossary and a bibliography, etc. So this is her book, and it's available on her website. There is a link to her website on the podcast website if you are interested in adding this to your collection. It's called St. Paulia, The History and Origins of the African Violet. Discover its family and species, learn how to grow these small plants with an extraordinary potential, and get acquainted with the lesser known varieties, the African violet trailers. So I just wanted, because I love it when I get treasure in the mail. I had that one sent to my office, and I was so happy to have it. It was just like, yay. Well, I told you we were going to talk about lighting this week, and we are, to a certain extent. I have done a little bit of research. enough to know that it is a highly technical subject, and you guys know that I'm not a particularly scientific slash technical person in the way that I grow my plants. I read the chapter in Pauline's book, Growing to Show, when I was learning, and I had great mentors. And so I use fluorescent light cards, they're plant stands. The stands that I have, I got from Indoor Garden Supply. It's a place in Michigan. They are always at National, and often I've purchased things from them at National, and then they'll ship them home, which is great. There have been a number of articles in the magazine recently, and I guess what I really would like to do is I'll touch on these things. I realize that I just don't have the knowledge to truly explain all the new lighting things to you, and it will be better for you to do some reading and see what your thoughts are. For someone, the chapter on lighting in Pauline's book, and this is the new edition, it's very good, it's very thorough, and it talks about fluorescent light growing, and that's really what it talks about. On my plant stands, I use the Growlux tubes. On my plant stands are 2 by 2. My shelves are so they're square. I have one big stand, the one in the basement, that's a 2 by 4. And in that one, I just use soft white or cool white bulbs. I think they are cool white. But in the other stands, my square stands, I use the Growlux ones. I like the way the plants look under them. I mean, it makes them look so beautiful because of the spectrum of light that comes through. And it talks, I mean, Pauline, this is a great place to start to get some information on the lights. And, you know, things have been changing. There are more than just the old standard fluorescent tubes now. There are T8s and T12s and T5s, and there are LED chip lighting, they're bulbs, they're actual bulbs. There was an article by, I have to put my glasses on, Don Landak, I think is his name. Joyce actually sent this to me because it's in an older edition of the magazine. And of course, I must have cut that piece off, but I know I wrote it down. It was in the May-June 2011 edition, and it's the use of LED chip lighting to replace traditional fluorescent lighting. And it talks about the cost savings involved with that, and there is a picture. That's what the bulb looks like. So that's another choice. There is the very first chapter in Joyce and Kent's book, You Can Grow African Violets, is light, it makes a shining difference. And the first sentence is, it all begins with light. Light is essential for plant growth. It is one of the most important factors involved in the successful cultivation of African violets. And usually our choices, for most of us, have always been natural light or fluorescent light. Obviously today we have more choices. If you were starting to grow today and you don't have any light carts, then I would certainly suggest that you look into all of these different types of lights and figure out what you think might work best for you. In the most recent edition of the magazine, Neil Lipson has part 2 of his article, and I went to the previous edition of the magazine, but it must have been like 2 editions ago that his article was, and of course I couldn't find it. But in the most recent magazine, it's called Lighting Basics Part 2, Growlux Lamps, T5s, and More. And he does discuss this in very good detail. He's a computer guy, and so he's certainly far more technical than I am. And he says for over 20 years he's used a regular lamp, like a 4-foot fluorescent lamp with a Growlux lamp. And he says, I only standardize on 4-foot T12 lamps. They are the best and most efficient and allow mixing 2 kinds of lamps. This particular growing lamp is made by Sylvania. Anyway, I won't read all of that to you. But there are lumens and watts, and I mean, he's got a chart, and there is a chart in Pauline's book as well. And he talks about the T5 new high efficiency lamp, and he talks about distances and how they're growing. And he says that Pauline was a strong believer of using Grow Lux lamps, which is quite frankly probably why I do, because that's how I learned. And then he talks about alternatives, and I will read you his conclusion because it's just a few paragraphs, and I think that it's very, very valid. He says, if you have the money, one Grow/AQ/WS and one Grow/AQ, those are types of bulbs, will give you about the best lighting. If the two lamps in the fixture are close together, you will get about 85% the benefit if you use one warm and one cool of almost any brand, with the big box stores all having really what you would need. He says try to buy lamps that have a CRI, a color rendition index, over 80. Remember that lighting is a small part. He says lighting is a small part of growing, as environment, fertilizer, etc. are a big factor too. Of course they are, but lighting is pretty critical. He says don't use T5 lamps unless you are lighting a very wide area, much more than 22 inches wide, as you will only waste light by doing so, causing spillover. Also remember that you cannot use two lamps to adjust the color with T5s the way you can with regular fluorescents. The regular fluorescents have been time tested for decades, but if you know the technical points on T5s, they can work well. It's not too easy, however, to analyze this. If you need a new ballast for one of your fixtures, buy the electronic version. They pay for themselves in a couple of years. If you live in a cold climate, most of the year they won't pay back as much. So I think that he raises very good points. The newer fixtures, and I believe that some of these are available in many of the places that sell light stands, etc. They cost more, and for me personally, to replace my setup that I've had for many years, it's not cost effective. So I'll be sticking with my Grow Lux bulbs and my plain old fluorescent fixtures. They do work well for me. This is not to say that the newer fixtures might not work better, but it's what I learned, and I'm happy with it. So for me, and again, this is a personal issue, it ain't broke, so I'm not going to fix it. But I think it's important, and particularly if you have an interest in it and you're maybe thinking about what you want to do for light, if you're a newer grower and you're thinking about investing in some light cards, because they are spendy. So you want to make sure that you have what you truly want. So then I encourage you to do some research. And I got this great email. I mentioned it to you last week. I got it from Amy Allison of Three Oak Violets. And she says, I noticed, and she sent this to me in February because I had mentioned I was going to talk about lighting. And she said, hi, Annie. Again, enjoying your podcast. Thank you. I'm glad you like them, Amy. I noticed in your last one that you are planning on talking a bit more about lighting in an upcoming episode, which is great. I think I hear more questions about lighting than almost anything else. There's one thing about lighting I've tried very hard to stress to new growers, and sometimes it seems to fall on deaf ears. I will share, and if you agree, maybe you could mention it so that more people will take it to heart and save themselves some headaches. One of the main things new violet growers are always told is that if their violets don't rebloom, the plants aren't getting enough light. They need to understand, though, that any sudden change usually leads to problems, even if the change is indeed required by the plant. I've come up with the perfect term to describe what I'm talking about here: light shock. It happens when window-grown plants are suddenly put on that brand new plant stand, or when plants are suddenly exposed to a 12-hour light day if they are only used to 8. And lately, some people have been asking about and trying the newer T5 or T8 bulbs that are way more intense than the T12s. The T12 is the standard fluorescent that we use now. Then they don't know what to do when their violets suddenly freak out. The tendency is to change lighting suddenly, But this is such a huge mistake, and it can cause a reaction that really can take months to reverse. A bunchy plant, or one that suddenly lifts up its leaves to protect the crown from being burned, won't just lay flat overnight when lighting is reduced. It takes a long time. Also, sometimes the leaves themselves will curl down so far that they literally split along the edges. Obviously, this is discouraging for new growers. The bottom line advice I always try to stress is this: always make very small incremental changes to the lighting and wait at least a week before making more changes. For each small change, it takes violets time to manifest the changes in their growth. For each inch we lower a bulb or raise a shelf, wait a week before lowering it more. If bringing plants from a window to a light stand for the first time, utilize side tables first to bring the plant gradually closer to the stand. This gives the plant time to acclimate to the intensity of a fluorescent bulb. By taking extra time to acclimate the plant to new lighting, a grower can see the effects and then evaluate what else is needed. So Amy, thank you for that, because it's so true. And again, it's something that I do instinctually because it was how I was trained. When I first began to grow for show, of course, I used Pauline Bartholomew's schedule, her pre-show schedule. And when you use the pre-show schedule, you only increase light 1 hour each week, according to the schedule that she has created. So it's not a huge change. It's a gradual increase of light. So great point. And do take it to heart. Oh my goodness, I'm a talking head again this week. But I will put as much in the show notes as I can for you about resources for lighting information. And I hope that this was helpful. And now it's time to take a look at what's on the stands. I'll be right back. Here we are in the guest room, and it's time to take a look at what's on the stands. I've shifted position just slightly on a few of these. Here is Optimara Ontario, finally blooming, starting to. Rob's Wagga Wagga, looking good. Like a few more of those blossoms to open up. Vaughn's Little Lady, I had to take some leaves off. It's blooming well, but the symmetry is not great. We'll see how it does. Roulette, just would like them to bloom a little more. And then over here, on this side, this Optimara Michigan had a sucker on it that I had to remove. And here's Western Moon. Down here on the second shelf, things are going along just fine. These are the hopefuls for National. Those ones right there. Sherman's Paradise and Reflections of Spring. And down here, things are happening. People trying to bloom. This is EK Princessa Grezza. This is Optimara Hawaii. Remember the first one? The first leaf to go and to shoot up babies, and here it is. It doesn't seem to be a really large standard, although it's still in a 3-inch pot, so it's got some time, but here's its beautiful blossom, and I like it. This is Jersey Rose Trail, Gala Pink. This is Santee Sue getting ready to bloom, and that is Samuchmi getting ready to bloom. That's the third shelf. And now, you know, we've got another shelf down at the bottom. So hang on. And let me get back over here and take a look. Whoa, that's Ellie Gardner getting ready to bloom. Here is Jean-Pierre Croteau growing like mad. Rob's Taruka. And this is the Ulbaetzia one. Which one is that? These Russian ones, it's hard. Zima Ulbaetzia. Getting ready. Shift it over a little. There we go. So it's not pushing on that leaf. There we go. It's going to be pretty. And House of Amani. Let's go down to the basement. Here we are in the basement. This is Willowa in the front. And this is another Russian one, and I need to look up the actual Russian name. It's the English translation is Sky, it says EK Sky Azure, which makes sense. And it is, I'm trying to fall over here. Hang on. It's a nice looking plant. As you can see, it's a nice blossom, and it needs some grooming, and it's ready to be potted on. So the next couple weeks, hopefully I will get a moment to be able to do that. And here are, oh yeah, this shelf looks a lot different, doesn't it? I left some of these down here. There's Pink Pussycat, still making a very nice recovery from having a crown transplant, restart I should say. This is Frosty Frolic. It's got a leaf that needs to go. These are some of the ones that were down here before. I took some upstairs and I left some down here. We'll see how they do. Some of them look a little wonky. We'll see. Here's Traveling Man, still looking pretty good. Here's A. John's Winter Sun, looking like it wants to bloom again. I think I'm going to stop that. This is the Moz plant, Moz Old Fashioned. And I moved this one over from the other tray. This is Lavender Tempest. Quick look at my sorry looking Acacia. It really is kind of sorry looking, you guys. Oh man, I can't wait for it to warm up for it. Let's go up to the sunroom, or I should say the kitchen. Here's my Petrocosmia caryi. Forgive the mess here that's around it. Here's the Gesneriad shelf. Nothing really new. Everybody growing, looking kind of nice. I moved Christmas Dream down here. It's really looking like it wants to bloom. It needs to be potted on. Now I need some grooming. Moonlit Velvet, one of my straps. And oh, here we go. These are the plants that were downstairs, and there still were a few that were up here, but I moved quite a few of them. This one was here. This is Jersey Snowflakes. I think that's Optimara Little, Wichita Girl. My Champagne Pinks. And these are the other plants that were on their way from downstairs. You can see that it's a sunny day here in Chicagoland. Here's Grape Glory. Looking nice. This is interesting. This is Perfect Harmony. And can you see that it has this like wonky looking kind of curled up leaves? I don't know if that happened, how that happened while it was in the tray, what was going on with it, but you can see that the center growth in the crown is looking okay. So I'm leaving these here for just a little while longer, and then I'm going to remove them and let this keep growing. I know you're going to ask me about this one if I don't look it up. This is Frosty Bubbles. There we go. And this one is Max Scorching Sun. Sassy Sister. Every time I grow Sassy Sister, I end up with Irish Flirt. So I'm really hoping that this time it's Sassy Sister. This is Cherry Cola. And this is a mini Cool Blue Hortense Pittman plant. Always beautiful. Okay, guys, that's the look. Here, let's go take a quick look at the big box violet. Here it is in the sun. Looks good. Needs some water. Gonna give it a drink today. And gotta tell you, can you see it? It's trying to bloom. Here it goes. This is just amazing to me. I love this. Speaks so well of, just having some violets in your home that you're not growing for show, to just have them in a self-watering pot And as long as you're repotting regularly, it seems to be working to use use the potting mix that has the fertilizer in it. So for home use, I think it's a great idea. All right, that's a look at what's on the stands this week. I'll be right back. Isn't it exciting? I say this every week once they start to bloom, but things are really blooming. I'm happy to see Optimara, Ontario. It's got an awful lot of buds, and I'm just so hoping they're going to open this week. I did increase the light time. They're over 16 hours now of light, just trying to get them to bloom for the Illinois State Show, which will be happening next weekend. So, and speaking of the Illinois State Show, it's time to get the bail money ready. And I'm getting the bail money ready this week because next week I will be at Illinois. So the podcast may be a little delayed next Sunday. I'm going to do my best. And I will obviously try to take footage of the show and share it with you guys. And I will hopefully have some friends to interview there and experts so that I can share that with you as well in the weeks to come. So, but this is a popular weekend next weekend, the first weekend in April. The First African Violet Society of Wichita Falls in Wichita Falls, Texas, is having their annual show and sale on April 5th and April 6th. And Capital District African Violet Society in Voorheesville, New York, is having their annual show and sale on April 6th and April 7th. Show Me African Violet Club in Kansas City, Missouri, is having their annual show and sale, again April 6th and April 7th. The Illinois African Violet Society is having their annual show and sale on April 6th. And that is going to be in Moline, Illinois. Capital City African Violet Society in Sacramento, California, is having their annual judged show and sale, again April 6th and April 7th. And the African Violet Club of Morris County in Morristown, New Jersey, is having their 18th annual show and sale, again April 6th and April 7th. So lots going on all over the country next weekend. If you are close to any of those shows, of course, I will link to them in the show notes and you can get information on exactly where and the hours and times, etc. And I hope that if you are relatively close that you will avail yourself of an opportunity to see a wonderful show somewhere. And if you're going to be in Illinois, please walk up to me and introduce yourself because I would love to meet you in person. It would be great. So it's time to keep moving forward. I want to thank you all for joining me this week. I want to thank you actually for joining me every week. The podcast is available, as you know, on the website. It's also available from Blip TV and from iTunes. You can subscribe to it in any of those places. And thank you for coming back every week. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for telling your friends and sharing info about the podcast. I so appreciate that. Will be back on Facebook, as I mentioned earlier. Today, Sunday, it's Easter Sunday. It will be Easter Sunday, and I will be out there catching up on all the things I've missed. So it'll be easier to catch up with me, I think, going forward. And I hope that your week to come, I hope that your days are filled with all the things you love. Good growing. I'll see you next time.